Hey everyone, today we're ranking the weapons of DBD, mostly just based on how they look and their animations because there's not much else to rank them by, they're cosmetics. We're ranking every character's base weapon skin. This time around I got your input for a more balanced view too. We will be including some secondary weapons this time also. The hammer for Billy is the lowest rated. This one somewhat surprises me, but I think it might be partly down to how it's viewable in game, being quite out of view for a lot of it. The weapon itself though is a thrown together cattle hammer, having a lot of wear on it, likely crafted by Billy himself. I do like it, but it is a shame you can't see much of it in-game. Hunting knife gets very little love. The Legion weapon is maybe the closest in-game we have to kind of a default knife. It's a very generic blade and doesn't really make Legion stand out all too much. The Sledge comes next and is a smaller but cleaner version of Billy's hammer. I do think it looks cool, although simple. There's something very brutal and harsh about a literal cattle hammer. Bonebuster is a weapon I was very surprised to see so low. Maybe it's because it's kind of a frail looking cane. It doesn't seem like it would work well as a weapon. Personally, I think it's cool. I like how it contrasts Blight's two sides of more intelligent and sophisticated, but the cane itself is still crooked and broken in many ways, embodying him well. Madame Butterfly didn't get much love. I do understand this too, with this knife said to be a butterfly knife, when in reality it's more of a flip blade. It would have been cool to have kind of a CSGO-esque butterfly in the game, with this knife being quite simplistic. One thing I think people overlooked is that the knife actually has a feather pattern across it. When Clown begins killing in his lore, he starts with birds, collecting feathers before he moves on to fingers, so that's definitely a cool lore nod. The stick is a straightforward bat covered in spikes and some small sparks of electricity. I quite like it, it's a simple but brutal looking weapon. Polished Head Smasher is another I'm quite sad to see so low. I think it's disliked for the fact that it doesn't fit the grimier vibe of the realm, with its bright pink neon, and the general style of the bat. I personally think it looks very cool with the color scheme, and I also like the thin blade that runs down the bat. The Bonesaw is one of the more precise looking weapons, wielded by Nurse. It feels very fitting. The saw itself is quite elegant and thin, and sets itself apart from some of the other weapons. For other characters this weapon really wouldn't work, but here I think it does. The Claw is the name of Hag's weapon, or her hand really. I've always liked the look of this one and the effort put into its horrific look. You get a close look at the bony, fused together fingers. The weapon itself is also kind of bandaged on to the rest of her body. In the description, it's noted to have grown and twisted into this new shape. Razor-sharp dual blades are probably one of the visually cooler features of Skull Merchant. I really like their design personally. The long blades are very imposing, and I honestly kind of like how it's messily taped to her arm. It makes for a very brutal makeshift design that kind of works. Blade of Marseille is maybe one of the most unique weapons in terms of shape, being a sort of sickle type weapon. It looks very battered and worn with its years of use, and fits twins quite well. It has a nail slam through the top, and I'm not too sure why, but it's definitely an interesting look. Bubba's chainsaw is pretty simply just a chainsaw, but admittedly for Bubba it's pretty iconic. A simple yellow chainsaw that he got for his birthday, but something that is representative of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre as a franchise. Combat Knife is a rather basic weapon, but seemed to get a bit more love than some other blades. It does have a slightly more interesting shape, and does fit Wesker very well. It's a slightly more imposing knife with it being larger than some others, and feels a little more like a Bowie knife. Profane Censer is one of the most interesting weapons, with it technically not being one. This thing is an incense burner, but is used by Adiris as a weapon. I personally like the intricacy of it a lot, and how it constantly billows out smoke, with it presumably burning some kind of substance to mask the plague smell. Tactical Knife is another fairly simple blade, but it fits Ghosty well. He's a tactical and precise character, so the blade being this way too works well for him. He has a nice and unique pose for his blade too, with how he holds it backwards, adding a little variation. The Cleaver is Trapper's weapon, and I like this one a lot. It has a very rough look, which fits Trapper well, and is because it was crafted by him in the Macmillan Foundry. I like the classic machete type blade, but with the rougher metal. Broadaxe is Huntress's weapon and feels pretty iconic to her, to be honest. It works well with her role as a Huntress, and it has a certain presence with it looking so worn and still dampened by some poor person's blood. Trickster's blades, I'm glad, got a bit more love than his bat. These things look so cool, I think, with how they have sort of a fade. They're so shiny and bright, and sure, they look a little silly when hung up in the grimy lockers, but they do still look very cool and fit Trickster well. Hook and chain is the smallest weapon in the game, being a very small chain with a hook on the end. Pinhead swings it out in front of him, summoning it from a portal. It has a cool little animation with it too. I do like this one for its uniqueness, especially with the animations paired alongside it. Modular Claw is an interesting weapon, being a blend of biological matter and metal. It's kind of cool looking and certainly has a uniqueness to it. I find it a bit odd with how it just dangles down and seems very loose even when it swings, but I guess it works for the thrown together look of Singularity. Knotted Appendage is more just a string of different human and animal parts. It's a disturbing looking creation and is shaped into a sort of claw or scythe type weapon. The main feature is the many fingers, which shows just how many people have been absorbed into this thing. Xenomorph's tail I do like a lot, and mainly for the sort of skeletal look it has, with the different segments being visible, all coming up to the point of the tail. It's an interesting look and is very alien and creepy, which works well. Lithe Arm is one I was surprised to see so high. It's a fairly creepy look though, and does have some cool details. It's a sleek look and has some cool patterning on the hands. There's a certain elegance to them, whilst also looking incredibly deadly. Raw fists are literally just big fists, but I do kind of like them. They're wrapped in the rubber and look very inflamed. It shows off Nemesis as a BOW, and essentially just a beefed up human. Hunting hatchets got a pretty high rating. They are fairly simple hatchets, but they do have a certain roughness and are definitely iconic as a weapon at this point, with Huntress being fairly well known. I do like them, and again probably a handcraft on her part. Kitchen knife is a controversial one, I think. I'm personally of the opinion that this should be fairly low. It's a kitchen knife, but I think due to Maya's fame with this weapon, it kind of comes out a little higher as a result. Sharp Palette Blade is one of the most unique weapons in the game, I think, with it being created from ink. Not only that, but it's also shaped into a palette knife being a blade artists use when painting. Admittedly, it doesn't really look like a palette knife, much like the clown and butterfly knife situation, but I appreciate the sentiment. The blade wobbles around a bit and has some cool particle effects too. Hidden Blade definitely has the cool factor, with how it slips out of Pig's sleeve in a clean snapping motion. The actual blade is rather simplistic, but it being hidden and pretty clean looking means it's still quite cool. Yamaoka Blade is a very cool ancestral blade of the Yamaokas. I really like it. It's a cool ornamental looking sword and definitely feels fitting in the hands of the Oni. Barbarous Claws for demo got a pretty high placement, and I do agree they have a very cool visual design. They're these alien, distorted and oversized hands which curl and have these sharp points. Very cool visually and pretty creepy too, to be honest. Billy's chainsaw was rated much more highly than his hammer. I do think it deserves the love too, with it likely being a custom made saw by Billy. It has a very unique look and has some interesting features like the spikes coming out. A unique chainsaw with a nice reflection of Billy's character. Ring of Fury is unique for the fact that her weapon is actually her psychic powers. She summons a symbol which reads curse and damages the survivors with it, this being done through her Nensha ability, using her psychic powers to project images, in this case to damage. The actual visual of the curse is cool and has a disturbing green color. I also like how she puts out a full palm of her hand, making it quite a unique attack to look at. Imposing Claymore is a really cool weapon, being this huge blade. It has years of wear visible on it with the chips and scrapes. It's a very cruel looking weapon that has clear years of history within it, which kind of just makes Night all the more terrifying. Azarov's axe is one of the better original original character weapons, I think, with it incorporating a large part of Wraith's lore, the skull being from his boss, Azarov, who manipulated Wraith and essentially landed him in the realm. This skull therefore being incorporated into the weapon is not only a striking look, but also very relevant for the character. The wielding of Azarov as the weapon is almost like a show of this is why he's here. Clawed Glove is a very iconic weapon in horror. This one gets points I think for being both cool but also very iconic, meaning it comes out quite highly here. The weapon is very unique with the handmade look of the glove, but the equally deadly and disturbing look of it. A creepy creation. Shattered Katana is one of the most visually detailed weapons I think, and I do really like it for that. It's a cooler version of Oni's blade, and feels much more representative of the current state of the Yamaoka legacy. This one is really amazing, reflecting spirit well, especially with how it expands out from a shard. Such a cool concept. Kanabo is Oni's secondary weapon that he pulls out when in Blood Fury. It's pretty much just a normal Kanabo, maybe a bit bigger. It's certainly a cool weapon and does work well with Oni as an Oni, with it being the signature weapon that they wield in folklore. Pretty cool. The Redeemer feels like it's cheating just a bit, seeing as it's like multiple weapons in one. It is a very cool weapon though, from its name all the way down to its visuals. The whole thing looks brutal with the spear poking out and the bayonet strapped to the bottom. It's a rifle fit for a character named the Deathslinger, and is the reason essentially he's called that. Great Knife for Pyramid Head got a lot of love. This thing I believe is the biggest weapon in the game, and is quite literally an oversized knife. One detail I found out about it fairly recently, I probably put in a video somewhere, is it's actually one half of a pair of scissors, reflecting that Pyramid Head is a part of James Sunderland, another half to make him whole. Alright, well that's gonna do it. I do hope you enjoyed. As always, let me know your thoughts and how you would rank these weapons down below. Thanks, and goodbye.